What's up guys, and welcome back to Shredcraft RC. I'm Cam, and today is part 3 of the MST FRX RS RC drift car build. The first episode I announced the build and invited you guys to join along. I included links to the chassis kit and all the parts, tools, and accessories that I'll be using on this build series, with the goal being to share the knowledge and have a large group of people join in on the build, share their thoughts, input as we design custom parts, drive the car, figure out how we can improve it as a group together. What I've got here is the FRX build manual, and in today's episode we're going to start putting this chassis together in its stock form so we can see how we can better improve it. So I've got some things laid out here, and I'm just going to quickly go over what I have. I'm going to talk about the electronics that I am going to use on this build, go over some tips and tricks, and then I'm going to zen out and start assembling it and going step by step, and I'll chime in with you guys as I get to some interesting parts or if I see anything out of the ordinary. But most of the time when I'm building, I kind of like to put on my favorite YouTube channel or some music, zen out, and really focus on the assembly process. That way in the future when I go to improve it, make changes, add parts, or design parts, I kind of have a better idea on how these parts work together. Let's jump in to the electronics and I'll show you what I'm working with. First up, as I mentioned in the first episode, one of the initial things that I figure we'll have to get over and find a fix for is having a rear mounted ESC and a front motor, which makes this chassis very unique. So I have some 16 gauge, actually this is 12 gauge ESC wire, and then I went ahead and I desoldered my Hobbywing D10 10.5 turn motor. For an ESC, I'm going to use the XD10 Pro. This is the Hobbywing Drift ESC. These will all be linked down in the description below if you guys want to purchase the exact same parts. For this one, I have a spare AGFRC 19 kilogram servo. This is the A50 BHL servo. This is an Amazon servo, but I've had good luck with it and I think it's a decent budget option. But I've linked to my normal Yokomo or RevD RSST servo down in the description, and then the old trusty V4 Yokomo gyro. So that is kind of the base of the electronics that I'll be using. And then I have bags 1 and 2 laid out here, which just so happen to be the first couple steps here in the manual. What I did notice, which was pretty cool upon initially opening the manual for this car, is that it has a full exploded view of all the parts, which this is very handy when assembling a kit, just in case, like I said before, there's any parts or screws or anything that you need to replace. It has all the part numbers and where they go on the chassis. So awesome addition to the manual there. And then we have the list of tools that MST recommends, and then right into the assembly. So it looks like the first part of this build is going to be assembling the arms and the front toe blocks, which is a pretty straightforward process. Another thing that's really nice on a lot of kit manuals is that when it puts all the parts from the bag onto the side of the page here, these are usually drawn to scale. So if there's a ball cup or something that might be questionable in length, or if there's multiple ball cups in the bag, it's nice to be able to put the actual ball cup up to the picture and reference it to make sure you're using the right size. They will also often include measurements on how long the arms should be and things like that. So it's really important to pay attention to all these things, especially the measurements and the sizes of shims, spacers, ball cups, things like that, just so it all goes together appropriately. And then we will have the box stock alignment for the car as we continue. The next steps look like it's the rear arms and the rear lower toe blocks, and then bag 2 looks like the steering system. I will get back to you after I get some of these steps completed, show you what it looks like as the car starts to come together, and then I will share some other tips and tricks that I do while assembling a chassis, just so you start at the best possible point in order to get your base alignment and tune set up so you know where to go from there. Finished steps 1 through 4 here, and we got something that's starting to look like a chassis. and I just wanted to talk about some of the things that I've noticed going through this build. Some of the first things that I noticed as I began the build here on the FRX was that it actually came with aluminum toe blocks, both front and rear. So that's nice to see, considering it's one of the more budget-friendly kits. The other thing that I noticed and saw were that the arms have a little bit of friction, but I'm assuming that's something that will wear in with time as the chassis gets driven. And then another thing was building this transmission. It actually has a quick change rear end back here, so you're able to change the gears out and give you a couple different options, along with an entire list of gear ratios depending on the internal gears that you have in here. So it's nice. It has a gear differential with a bevel gear, and then it goes out to these quick change gears in the rear. And then I got the motor mounted up here with the front gear reduction system, and it's pretty cool. I've personally never seen anything like that before, but that's pretty cool to see, and I'm excited to see what this chassis feels like. Essentially, I have the lower arms, motor mount, and transmission done, and then moving forward it will be the servo mount and the battery tray, where the servo actually mounts underneath this battery tray and then uses a long arm to mount from the rear of the chassis and actuate the steering here. Another cool factor on this chassis is it has an aluminum bell crank with carbon fiber wiper arms. So that's a nice touch, where normally a plastic kit would come with plastic wipers, plastic bell crank. This is going to increase the rigidity and the accuracy of the feeling of the chassis. Another thing that I noticed, and I forgot to realize while tracing this chassis, is that the front motor mount plates are actually keyed in to these little dots here, and that's simple enough to work into the design as I move forward with the chassis design. And also the rear transmission has these key mounts, which will need to be added into the design as well. But moving right along, I did put some time into this, so there's a little effort going in, but I feel like I'm at a pretty good stopping point. I made a mess here with bag number 5, all the plastic parts and servo mounting parts. The manual is telling you to use a 21.5 mil servo horn, and on here I believe I have an 18 mil or a 19 mil. So I'm debating if I'm going to switch to a bigger servo horn or just run what I have here. I'm sure there could be some sort of lever ratio action going on. I will get back with you as I start to get more built here on the FRX chassis. Making good progress here. I was able to mount the ESC and solder on the longer wires. Nothing really to report on. The kit's really going together quite nice. The only issue I ran into is the instructions tell you to put the stopping screw into the front arm pin before putting the countersunk screw into the mount. I just had to pull the stopping screw out, put the countersunk screw in first, and then put the stopping screw in, but not a big deal. And everything's coming together. I did have to order a longer sensor cable for the ESC to the motor, so I will be sure to have that linked down in the description below. And then I'm moving on to the shocks. You guys, I'm sure, have seen my shock building video. I've never built MST shocks before, but it's a very similar process. These look like they come with 3-hole pistons. They also have these little foam pads that I assume go above the diaphragm here. And then I got the O-rings and the cap. So just a couple tips before you start assembling shocks. I'm going to put a little bit of grease inside the O-rings so those thread onto the bodies nice. There was also a little bit of flash on the pistons and the shock shafts, so I just trimmed those off with a little razor, or you could use a little piece of sandpaper. And then the other thing I'm going to do is slime the inserts where the O-rings go and pre-slime the O-rings before you push the threaded shock shafts through, and then you kind of assemble everything into the end of the shock here, and just make sure it's nice and free flowing and sealed up with some slime or silicone grease before you go ahead and fill them with oil and do your bleeding process. I've really been zenning out here and I'm pretty happy with how it's turning out. So I'm going to get the shocks on, and then I think what we'll do is throw it on the alignment rack and the scales once it's fully built, and then we'll be able to see what the stock alignment settings are versus what my base alignment settings are. So we'll check back in when I get these shocks assembled, and I'll show you what it looks like then. Wrapping up the build here, and I got it mounted up to the alignment rack. Shocks are done. They feel good. MST actually uses mineral oil instead of silicone oil, so that was new for me. Kind of had to poke some of the bubbles with a toothpick, get them popped, but they're built, just about ready to run, minus that sensor cable. But something that did impress me here was the alignment was dead on. So it looks like right about -9 degrees on each wheel, which is right in the ballpark with what I would normally set the car up as. And even across, I've made sure to measure the turnbuckles properly, make sure, double check they were all right. And then the one thing that I might change that may be hard for you guys to see on camera is the toe. It looks like we're right around right around +2 degrees per wheel. That one might be closer to 3, but I really won't know until I turn it on and get the servo centered and aligned. And then if we check caster here, well, I guess this is the wrong size ball wrench because these are 2.5 mil heads, but I think it's 7.5 degrees on caster. And then if we take a look at the rear, the shocks might be kind of low. Looked like we're right around -2 degrees, which is what I would normally run on any of my other cars. So I am impressed. The quality of the kit, all the pieces went together really well. Like I said, there was that one issue with the countersunk screw going into the front arm mount there. But other than that, I am impressed with this quality. The last MST I had was a RMX 2.0, and I think their quality has improved since that generation of chassis. That other car, I can remember the ball cups being pretty loose. Like the balls were slightly smaller than the cups. Other than the sensor cable, this car is just about ready to drive. So in the future episodes coming up on this car, if that sensor cable comes in at a decent time, I'm going to put in some track footage in the initial reactions of driving this car in this video. But if not, I do have a body purchased. I think I'm going to let that remain a secret until the next episode. The one thing I nearly forgot. Let's put this thing on the scales and see what we're at. So I'll screen capture that once it's on. And then, yeah, this definitely is not a lightweight build here. Let that settle out. So 1268, 40% rear, 60% rear, 40% front. Grab a screen capture, and then, you know, a body's gonna add another 150 grams, 1300, 1400 gram car, and you can definitely feel it. It's got a lot of mass, so it gives us an opportunity to have some improvement, possibly with titanium parts or aluminum parts or even carbon fiber. I'm going to continue working on the designs and be sure to update you all in future episodes. Pretty cool. So I know I didn't show a whole lot of the build process. Like I said, I kind of like to zen out, really focus on the instructions and getting the chassis assembled right. And it looks like, judging by that alignment, everything was done. Everything in the kit was really well done. All the plastic feels to be high quality. I was definitely impressed with how the instructions laid everything out and how that gearbox went together. Like I said, I'm just waiting on that sensor cable, and then I'll be able to take it to the track and possibly throw some of those shots in this video. And then I want to also give you guys my first impressions in driving it. I've been driving that Rev D RDX for 2 years now, and I'm very comfortable with the car, and I love how that car feels, and I've really got it dialed in. So this is a really fun project to start with something totally box stock and then be able to improve from there, just like I did with the RDX and some of the other cars I've done on this channel. So I'm really looking forward to it. I hope you guys enjoyed checking out some of the processes here. And yeah, I'm looking forward to see what we as a community can turn this chassis into. Complete car, actually. So be sure to let me know if you have experience driving an FRX RS. Let me know what you have done as far as upgrades, mods, performance things. I had the quick mindset to possibly move the ESC to the mid so I could fit my sensor cable and go take it for a rip. That's just one of those things where patience is kind of a virtue and you got to wait for the right parts for the right outcome. So that sensor cable should be here in a few days, and then I'll be able to go test drive this car and see how it really feels with completely box stock settings. I'm not going to change anything or adjust anything until I get a few batteries through it and I'm able to really feel what the car is doing stock, and that gives me a better idea of what I can do to improve it as far as parts or chassis accessories. Like I said, maybe removing some weight in some areas to better balance it out. But that 40-60 split is something I actually haven't driven. I believe my RDX is like a 35-75. So I'm really looking forward to getting this on track and checking it out. I just want to say thanks for watching, guys. Make sure if you want to follow along, you can check out the playlist for the MST FRX RS build and give me any input you have. And then also, if you guys want to pick up one of these kits yourself or any of the parts, tools, the alignment rack, the scales, all that stuff is linked down in the description below. And again, those are all affiliate links, so if you use my links, it really helps the channel out. And then give it a thumbs up if you like what you saw. Make sure to tune back in for more awesome RC content from Shredcraft RC. I'll catch you guys on the next one. Thanks. Peace.